Do you remember 2014? The Amazing Spider-Man 2 had come out to nearly unanimous disappointment, which was only burdened by the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was really ramping up, cranking out hits like Captain America, Winter Soldier, and even Guardians of the Galaxy, a team that general audiences had never heard of in their lives. Meanwhile, Spider-Man, one of the most popular superheroes ever created, was wallowing in mediocrity in another universe. That is, until December of that year, when Spider-Man was officially announced to be joining the MCU. Spider-Man fans rejoiced as we waited anxiously for the webhead's reintroduction to the world for the third time in just over a decade. And his first appearance was going to be a major one. Joining the battle in Captain America Civil War, we not only got to see Spider-Man in the MCU, but fighting alongside and against some of the biggest heroes in the history of Marvel Comics. Fast forward 6 years later, and Spider-Man's newest film broke box office records as a celebration of the character and how far he'd come in his own wholly unique journey, just as important to the generation growing up with this version of the character as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was to mine. However, in the wake of Spider-Man No Way Home, the fandom didn't seem to come together and celebrate all three Spider-Men equally. And today, I'm not going to go into great detail about why the Spider-Man of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's journey should matter to those with rose-colored glasses on, but instead I will be focusing on why this Spider-Man should be respected alongside the other two in terms of his capabilities. So we're going to take a deep dive into the strength, speed, skills, and powers of the now underestimated Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man to determine just how powerful Peter 1 is. And just so everyone is on the same page, if I ever need to reference either of the other two live-action Spider-Men, that being the Spider-Man from Sam Raimi's trilogy and the Spider-Man from Mark Webb's two films, I will be referring to them by their canon Marvel Cinematic Universe designations, those being the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man, respectively. Of course, I will simply refer to the MCU version as Spider-Man. So after literal years of poring over guidebooks, websites, interviews, directors' commentaries, and even reading through the movie scripts, I believe I can safely and accurately power scale Spider-Man. As with all of our Marvel Cinematic Universe power scaling videos, I will not be referencing any material that is not canon to the MCU. That includes the mainline and alternate universe comics, video games, TV shows, etc., etc. So with all that said, let's begin as we always do with strength. Of course, Spider-Man has incredibly impressive visual strength feats like stopping a car moving 40 miles per hour dead in its tracks, holding up a massive bell tower, catching a nearly 60,000 pound aero bridge, and holding together a ferry weighing over 6 million pounds. But this isn't really anywhere near Spider-Man's upper limits of strength. His less impressive looking feats are really where we start to see just how powerful Spider-Man is, and one of these feats is casually holding back Winter Soldier's bionic arm. This is impressive for multiple reasons. The first being that Winter Soldier's arm is consistently shown to be more powerful than Captain America. In the same film, Winter Soldier is unleashed by Helmut Zemo and gets into an altercation with Cap. In this scuffle, we see Cap using both his arms and legs to try and stop one of Winter Soldier's attacks. However, Bucky is able to overpower Cap and push him through the doors of an elevator shaft. One of Captain America's best calculable strength feats is during Age of Ultron, where he is able to shatter a portion of a reinforced concrete pillar by tossing Ultron into it. This feat comes out to 54,639,711 joules, or small building level. He can also easily destroy Ultron's sentries, which are made from grade 5 titanium, and the amount of energy needed to obliterate these sentries is 45,786,802 joules, keeping his strength level pretty consistent. So we know that Bucky is far stronger than this, but how strong is his metal arm? Well, with it, he is able to tear into Iron Man's suit. Iron Man at this point is able to tank the near point-blank explosion that destroyed Sokovia, which is calculated at nearly 17 tons of TNT, or enough force to level a city block. While you could argue that Bucky was holding back against Spider-Man, not knowing the full strength of his opponent and wanting to simply escape as quickly as possible, I think that's fine to say for the initial strike, but after that initial impact, Spider-Man is seen blatantly overpowering the arm while Bucky struggles against him. You can even hear the grinding of the metal and the whirring of the machinery while he tries to fight back against Spider-Man.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!
So, yeah, Spider-Man was very casually overpowering something that can tear into Iron Man's suits of this era. Not to mention that the official guidebook to the Marvel Cinematic Universe outright states that Spider-Man outmuscled the Winter Soldier's arm. Now, you might be thinking, didn't Spider-Man just straight up lose to Captain America in this movie we're talking about? Well, yeah, technically he did, but you have to keep in mind that prior to this, Spider-Man was trying to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He never fought a supervillain or enhanced being at this point. His first real fight was with Winter Soldier and Falcon, then immediately he's put into a 1v1 with the greatest soldier to ever live. His inexperience would be a major factor, not to mention he's holding back as Spider-Man always does, and finally at this point, Spider-Man doesn't even know his full strength. During the events of Homecoming, he is at his lowest point when Vulture surprises him with his wings and drops a building on the webhead. Spider-Man was convinced that he could not move the rubble off of him, but then found the strength to do so. After this, Spider-Man's feats become much more impressive and consistently so. He's able to no-sell strikes with killing intent from Cull Obsidian, who ragdolled Iron Man and could catch strikes from Hulkbuster version 2 and even damage that armor. Keep in mind that version 1, a weaker version, could stalemate Hulk at the time of Age of Ultron. At that time, Hulk would be somewhat relative to Thor's power, as the two characters typically mirror each other throughout their journeys. Thor, with Iron Man's help, was able to break apart Sokovia, and if you've seen our other MCU power scaling videos, you know where this is going, and if you haven't seen those, please check them out after this one. But as I said, Thor shatters Sokovia with Iron Man's help, and that, when calculated, gives Thor the ability to endure the force of over 200,000 tons, or in power scaling terms, large town level, which seems pretty obvious as the destruction of Sokovia was a good chunk of the city. So Spider-Man being able to outright stop attacks from Cull Obsidian, who could damage the Hulkbuster version 2, is very impressive. Now, I'm not saying Spider-Man is on the same level as Thor during, Endgame, but I'm saying a much weaker Thor is comparatively about the same strength as Spider-Man is towards the end of this first leg of Spider-Man's journey. And as I mentioned previously, Spider-Man's upper limits of strength weren't really achieved until after the events of Homecoming, and despite holding back, not knowing his full strength, not having mastered his spider sense, which he doesn't do until after Endgame, and being forced into a fight with the second most skilled combatant in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man is able to tag and hurt Captain America. Of course, Cap is holding back as well, but Spider-Man's inexperience in battle, and even with his own powers, doesn't make this fight with Captain America an accurate representation of what would happen if they fought after Far From Home, and, also assuming that Captain America wasn't, old. To take this a step further, Captain America is hit with and hurt by Crossbones' gauntlets. Spider-Man is also hit by these during Homecoming, however, these are enhanced versions created by the Tinkerer for Shocker. So these gauntlets actually pack more of a punch than the ones Cap was hit with, and Spider-Man was able to get back up and go on to battle Vulture. For even more consistency, Spider-Man was able to stagger Giant Man, something we only saw from Vision, who was stronger than Thor in Age of Ultron, and the combined power of War Machine and Iron Man. Spider-Man's strength is often misconstrued and downplayed to super soldier level due to various misconceptions about the character, so I hope I cleared some of that up, as Spider-Man is very consistently above super soldier level in pretty much every single adaptation, and that includes the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As for durability, we've seen Spider-Man take beating after beating, but continue to battle on. As I mentioned before, he is able to tank attacks from Shocker's enhanced Crossbones gauntlets, which in their base form could hurt Captain America, so of course these enhanced gauntlets would be more impressive. Spider-Man withstands a strike with killing intent from Cull Obsidian, so his durability would be relative to his overall attack power. He takes a backhand from Giant Man, point-blank blasts from Mysterio's drones, and even direct blasts from Goblin's pumpkin bombs, which are calculated at 423.41 kgs of TNT, or building level. And speaking of old Gobby, he was able to break a couple of Spider-Man's ribs in their first encounter. But despite this, Spider-Man continues to fight, and then later is able to fight against Lizard, Electro, Sandman, and Green Goblin, while weakened as detailed in the Spider-Man No Way Home script. So there's a lot of downplay out there concerning Spider-Man and his efforts in this final battle. The anti-MCU Spider-Man detractors have been out in full force, and I don't think Spider-Man gets enough respect for doing all that he does, while specifically weakened compared to the other two web slingers. He's able to take direct blasts from Electro and keep going, restrain Lizard long enough to save his friends, and then later drops Lizard with a kick. He fights and defeats Goblin despite being significantly injured at this time, which is pretty impressive considering that even taking a breath would be extremely painful with such an injury. But Spider-Man is able to perform incredible feats of strength and durability throughout the entire encounter with a major handicap. And just to hammer this point home a bit more, one of the most persistent symptoms of a broken rib is chest pain when taking a breath. Inhaling deeply hurts even more. Laughing, coughing, or sneezing can also send very sharp pains shooting from the site of the break. Depending on the location of the fracture, bending over or twisting your upper body may also trigger sudden pain. Striking or pressing on the fracture will cause pain for at least several weeks. I think all of this counts as striking the fracture, wouldn't you?
That's a lot of damage!
And throughout the fight, we do see that Spider-Man is still hurt significantly. It isn't something that's mentioned once and then forgotten by the writers. He's constantly grabbing his side while writhing in pain, and at one point is standing up, yelling in pain because it hurts so much.
What the hell is going on out there? I keep yelling at you, Peter too.
Additionally, you can't just chalk this up to a complete surge of adrenaline as someone in the UFC might utilize to keep going during a fight if they break a bone, as Spider-Man would have had a major adrenaline dump and cooldown period where the injury would really settle in. Of course, Spider-Man has a healing factor, but the wounds he sustains on his face from previous battles haven't healed at all, so his ribs would obviously still be broken in the final battle. So now that we've covered Spider-Man's strength and durability, let's discuss speed, which is a lot more consistent in No Way Home. So in this movie, we see all three Spider-Men consistently avoiding and outright dodging Electro's lightning blasts. Electro can wield typical Cloud to ground lightning blasts, so it's safe to accurately assume that these guys have the ability to dodge natural lightning. And it's a common feat in fiction and is considered massively hypersonic plus, giving Spider-Man reaction speeds of up to 6 million miles per hour. And of course, we're talking about his ability to react to and dodge something, not necessarily his travel speed, which are two completely different things. For more consistency, he scales roughly around Thanos in terms of speed, who can react to Captain Marvel, who has speed feats in the massively hypersonic ranges as well, so again, all very consistent for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Finally, let's discuss Spider-Man's equipment, skills, and abilities. In his first appearance, he is outfitted in a top-of-the-line Stark suit, complete with an artificial intelligence that he calls Karen, which functions similarly to Tony's various AI, as well as a whole host of neat gadgets at his disposal. Of course, he's designed and invented his own web shooters, which Tony Stark upgraded for him, giving him access to hundreds of web shooter options and combinations. Some notable ones being his standard sticky webs, ricochet webs, splitter webs, web grenades, taser webs, rapid-fire stun webs, and spider trackers. His Stark suit also comes equipped with shutter eye lenses that allow him to better focus, a heads-up display to analyze his surroundings, as well as various vision settings, such as the ability to see temperature, as well as X-ray vision. He has comms built in, a utility belt with additional web cartridges, a parachute, temperature control system, GPS, recon and combat modes, webbed wings allowing him to glide around, a spider buddy drone, and even an interrogation mode. While these aren't all the capabilities of the suit, these are all the ones that we are currently aware of. After losing this suit and then creating his own in Far From Home, Peter makes various adjustments to it, but he seems to lose a lot of the previous functionality, such as his AI. Of course, he also has the Iron Spider suit for a time, which would simply be a version of Iron Man's nanite armor specifically designed for Spider-Man, giving him enhanced durability as well as a neural reactive interface, allowing him to control the Iron Spider arms with his mind instead of manually or audibly. This suit is able to provide Spider-Man air as well and protect him from the elements. Additionally, the suit is outfitted with some kind of AI, not necessarily Karen, but we do see that the suit automatically pairs with Doc Ock's arms, giving Spider-Man control of them. Finally, the Iron Spider suit has what seems to be tracking missiles, I guess, which are able to seek out enemies and web them up, while Spider-Man is busy with something else. Pretty impressive. And while all this tech is very cool, Spider-Man would be nothing without his radioactive spider-granted abilities, and of course, like the moral code instilled in him by his aunt and uncle, yada yada yada. Of course, he's given enhanced strength, durability, and speed, but he's also granted a spider sense, which is an extrasensory awareness that allows him to be alerted of imminent dangers. This can be thought of as sort of a sixth sense, which subconsciously warns Peter of incoming threats. This precognitive ability typically allows him to dodge incoming attacks without seeing them, but can also alert him of greater threats, like when Thanos' children arrived in New York. While he was capable of all this prior to mastering the ability in Far From Home, after doing so, his spider sense is so all-encompassing that he can fight Mysterio with his eyes closed and even sense the change in someone's personality, as he was able to sense that Goblin had taken over Norman despite the fact that Goblin was doing his best to pretend otherwise. But easily his most impressive spider sense feat is when his astral form is pushed out of his body by Doctor Strange. His spider sense actually takes over and is able to control his body subconsciously while Peter's consciousness is outside of his physical body. And as I mentioned earlier, Spider-Man also has a healing factor, but it's not anywhere near the level of someone like Wolverine or Deadpool. He's able to crawl up walls, adhere to ceilings, as well as various other surfaces. In terms of skill, Spider-Man is very unorthodox in his fighting style, utilizing his insane reflexes, agility, and acrobatic abilities to seemingly glide around the battlefield, seamlessly transitioning from an evasion to an attack and vice versa. This style fits him very well and allows him to compete with those who would have more traditional, high-level martial arts training. Spider-Man is also a fantastic marksman, able to land complicated and difficult shots with his webs consistently and combining them on the fly to annihilate the opposition. But I think what is most impressive about Spider-Man is his mind. As I mentioned earlier, he's able to control all 4 limbs of the Iron Spider using just his brain. So he's controlling all 4 of those limbs, being aware of everything around him, controlling all of his other digits and limbs as well, and doing all of this seamlessly. Of course, he's a top-level student in the country, and even while distracted by his duties as a superhero, he's able to casually glide through his classes, receiving top marks that allow him to qualify for universities such as MIT. During one of his classes, he's able to solve a physics problem with one glance. He's so intelligent that even his other gifted classmates consider him to be the most valuable member of their academic decathlon team. He's so intelligent that he was able to design functioning web shooters and to create an intricately complex web fluid using high school chemistry leftovers. Using his intellect, he's able to devise a cure for Sandman, instantly deduces what material Falcon's wings are made of, creates a bomb out of spare car parts and a Mysterio drone. He's able to figure out the functionality of Doc Ock's inhibitor chip, recognize the issue with it, and come up with a solution, and is stated to be one of the few who could match Doc Ock's intelligence. Even the brilliant Norman Osborn and Tony Stark were floored when witnessing Peter's intelligence firsthand, both of them offering him jobs at their esteemed companies despite him still being in high school. When battling Doctor Strange, he's able to outsmart the Sorcerer Supreme, which is no small task. Strange is very gifted, and he has an eidetic memory, which allows him to earn both his MD and his PhD simultaneously, as well as become the Sorcerer Supreme in just a handful of years. And finally, Spider-Man is a very adept tactician and leader. He comes up with the strategy to take down both Giant Man as well as Ebony Maw, and during the events of No Way Home, he displayed his tactical prowess and leadership abilities excellently when he was able to lead and refocus the Spider team, the other members of which are older and more experienced than Peter 1 is, showing that he can stand out amongst his multiversal peers. So that sums it up for the power scaling of Spider-Man. What do you guys think? Is there anything that I missed? Something that maybe I should have mentioned as well? The real goal of this was to just shut up all the people that are downplaying this version of Spider-Man. Those eggheads can go kick rocks. Yeah, that's my best insult. Remember to like and subscribe. It does really help us out. And be sure to check out our other Marvel power scaling videos. And please follow me on Twitter. Do I have to beg?
God knows I don't ask you for much. Now come on, please, Jerry. I'm begging you, please. Come on, please.